February 14th, 1945. The jungle canopy of Mindanao, the Philippines. The air is not just hot. It is a physical weight, pressing down with the smell of rotting vegetation and unburied dead. Private First Class Kenji Ito lies motionless beneath the broad leaf of a fern, his uniform hanging off his skeletal frame like a scarecrow's rags. He does not move because movement burns calories, and calories are a currency the Japanese 35th Army went bankrupt on months ago. Above him, the sky buzzes. It is the sound of the American P-38 Lightnings, the twin-tailed devils that hunt anything that moves on the roads. But Kenji isn't looking at the planes. He is staring at a handful of dry rice in his palm, his ration for the next 2 days. Around him, men are gnawing on roots and boiling leather belts to extract some semblance of protein. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once the master of the Pacific, has ceased to exist as a supply force. The Tokyo Express, the destroyers that used to run supplies at night, has been derailed. They are alone. They are starving, and they are being told to fight to the death against an enemy they are convinced must be suffering just as they are. Propaganda from Tokyo tells them the Americans are weak. They are told the U.S. supply lines are overstretched, that the American public is weary, that their ships are sinking under the weight of Japanese kamikazes. Kenji wants to believe it. He needs to believe that the enemy is scraping the bottom of the barrel just as he scrapes the mold off his rice. 3,000 miles away, Ulithi Atoll, the Caroline Islands. The contrast is so sharp it feels like a hallucination. While Kenji Ito counts rice grains, the turquoise waters of the Ulithi Lagoon are churning with the wakes of over 600 ships. This is the secret anchorage of the United States Navy's Third Fleet. It is the largest naval base in the world, and it didn't exist 6 months ago. It is a floating city of steel, oil, and organized chaos. Carriers the size of skyscrapers swing at anchor, surrounded by a swarm of destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. But amidst these gray leviathans of war, there is a strange, ugly vessel bobbing sluggishly in the tropical swell. It has no guns. It has no armor plate. It has no sleek, hydrodynamic hull designed for speed. In fact, it barely looks like a ship at all. It is a blocky, rectangular slab of gray sitting low and heavy in the water. It doesn't even have an engine strong enough to propel itself effectively over open ocean. It has to be towed. This is the USS Quartz, IX-150. It is a barge, but it is not carrying ammunition. It is not carrying aviation fuel or tank treads. Captain J.E. Perkins stands on the bridge of a nearby supply tender, watching the Quartz settle into its berth. He wipes sweat from his forehead, the tropical sun beating down on the steel deck. He looks at the manifesto in his hand and shakes his head, a wry smile touching his lips. He knows what is inside that concrete hull. He knows that the United States Army and Navy have dedicated millions of dollars, thousands of man-hours, and a perilous journey across the submarine-infested Pacific to deliver this specific cargo. It is the ultimate display of logistical arrogance. It is a weapon, though it will never fire a shot. Its caliber is measured not in millimeters, but in gallons. Inside the quartz, the air is not humid and rotting like the jungle on Mindanao. It is freezing. A blast of Arctic air swirls through the internal compartments, powered by massive diesel generators that hum with a steady, rhythmic thrum. The walls are lined with insulation thick enough to withstand the equator's fiercest heat. The crew inside is not loading shells. They are dressed in heavy coats, breath misting in the artificial winter. They are pouring a mixture of powdered milk, sugar, and vanilla into massive industrial-sized churns. The United States military has realized that morale is as vital as fuel. They have calculated that a soldier who feels connected to home fights harder than one who feels abandoned. And nothing, absolutely nothing, says home to an American GI like a scoop of cold, sweet ice cream in the middle of a tropical hellscape. But simply shipping ice cream from San Francisco is impossible. It would melt long before it reached Pearl Harbor, let alone the forward operating bases. So the engineers did the impossible. They didn't just build a freezer, they built a factory. The Quartz is a barge refrigerated large, or BRL. Its hull is built of concrete because steel is too precious, needed for the carriers and tanks. But inside that stone shell lies a capacity that would baffle the starving commanders of the Axis powers. As the sun sets over Ulithi, casting long shadows across the water, the generators on the Quartz kick into high gear. The churns begin to spin. The smell of diesel exhaust mixes with the scent of vanilla. It is an industrial operation. Every 7 minutes, the machines inside complete a cycle. Every 7 minutes, 10 gallons of fresh, hard-frozen ice cream slide into the storage lockers. That is roughly 500 gallons a shift. While Kenji Ito fights the urge to eat the leather of his own boots, the United States Navy is preparing to distribute thousands of tons of strawberry and chocolate dessert to men who haven't seen a home-cooked meal in years. The supply chain required to do this is staggering. It involves cows in Wisconsin, sugarcane from the Caribbean, vanilla from Mexico, and a concrete ship towed across the widest ocean on Earth. It is a level of excess that is almost obscene, and it is about to collide with the reality of the enemy.
March 11th, 1945, beside the USS Quartz, Ulithi Lagoon. The sun is a hammer striking the steel deck of the destroyer USS Halsey Powell. The heat waves shimmer off the gun turrets, distorting the air like a mirage. The ship has been at sea for 3 weeks, screening the carriers of Task Force 58. The crew is tired, salt-crusted, and living on Spam and dehydrated potatoes. But today, the mood on deck is electric. They aren't pulling alongside an oiler for fuel. They aren't receiving 5-inch shells from an ammunition ship. They are rafting up to the concrete bathtub. Lieutenant Junior Grade Red O'Malley leans over the railing, watching the gap close between his sleek destroyer and the ugly gray slab of the USS Quartz. "Easy on the approach," the captain barks from the bridge. "You dent that barge and you'll explain to the admiral why the fleet is out of dessert." It is a joke, but nobody laughs. They are too focused. A crane swings out from the concrete barge. Suspended in the net is not a crate of grenades, but a series of canvas-wrapped, insulated cylinders. A cheer goes up from the destroyer's crew, a raw, guttural sound usually reserved for a home run or a shore leave announcement. Inside those cylinders is vanilla, 500 gallons of it. This is the ice cream diplomacy of the Pacific Theater. It is standard operating procedure that any destroyer picking up a downed pilot from the ocean is entitled to a reward from the pilot's aircraft carrier. The going rate is 20 gallons of ice cream per rescued aviator. But the Quartz changes the economy. It floods the market. It turns a luxury item into a standard ration. As the cylinders hit the deck, O'Malley watches his men swarm them. These are hardened sailors, men who have fought off kamikazes and endured typhoons. Yet they are jostling like schoolboys. The disconnect is jarring. They are roughly 1,500 miles from the coast of Japan, in the middle of the most brutal naval war in history, and they are about to eat a treat that requires refrigeration technology that the Japanese army on the nearby islands couldn't dream of. 2 days later, a forward operating base on Leyte. The logistical miracle doesn't stop at the water's edge. A Higgins boat slams its ramp down into the wet sand. Marines, grimy and exhausted from patrolling the tree line, look up wearily. They expect ammo crates. They expect jerry cans of gasoline. Instead, a quartermaster sergeant kicks a heavy, insulated box down the ramp. "Get it while it's cold, boys." It is impossible. The physics of it shouldn't work. Ice cream melts. The tropics are 95 degrees with 90% humidity. But the American supply chain has defeated thermodynamics. The Freeze King machines on the Quartz freeze the mixture so hard, and the insulation is so advanced that the product can survive the trip to the beachhead. Corporal Miller, a 19-year-old from Ohio, sits on a rotting log, his rifle propped against his knee. He takes a scoop from his mess tin. The cold shock against his teeth is painful, a sensation he hasn't felt in 6 months. It tastes like civilization. It tastes like Saturday night at the drugstore counter. For a moment, the war recedes. The fear of snipers, the rot of trench foot, the scream of mortars, it all fades behind the simple, overwhelming sensory experience of sugar and cream. The jungle perimeter, 400 yards away. Through the lens of a scratched pair of binoculars, Sergeant Major Hideo Tanaka watches. He is lying prone in the undergrowth, camouflage netting woven into his helmet. His stomach is a hollow pit. He has eaten nothing but a handful of scavenged yams in 2 days. He watches the Americans on the beach. He expects to see them sharpening bayonets or maintaining weapons. Instead, he sees them laughing. He sees them eating something from silver tins. He sees them relaxed, slapping each other on the back. Tanaka lowers the binoculars, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from a sudden, crushing realization. He looks at his own men. They are gaunt, their eyes sunken, their uniforms patched with scavenged cloth. They are counting bullets. They are saving strength. The Americans are eating dessert. It is a psychological blow heavier than any bomb. If the enemy can ship ice cream, across 5,000 miles of ocean to a combat zone, what else can they do? It means their ships are not being sunk. It means their fuel is not running out. It means they have so much excess capacity that they can devote entire vessels to making sweets, while Tanaka's emperor cannot even send rice. He crawls back from the ridge, the taste of bile in his throat. He has to report this. But he knows that if he tells his superior officer that the Americans are feasting on frozen milk on the beach, he will be struck for spreading defeatist eyes. It is too impossible to be true. And yet down on the beach, the laughter continues.
March 24th, 1945. Lower deck of the USS Quartz.
The noise is deafening. It isn't the sharp crack of gunfire or the roar of aircraft engines. It is the monotonous, grinding drone of heavy industry. Machinist's mate first class, Smitty Kowalski, wipes grease from his hands with a rag that smells of diesel and artificial vanilla. He is standing in the bowels of the concrete beast, monitoring the pressure gauges of the ammonia compressors. The needle flickers in the red zone. The ambient temperature outside the hull is 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the insulated hardening room, it is 10 degrees below zero. "Watch the mix feed," Smitty yells over the din. A younger sailor, shivering in a thick wool parka that looks absurd in the tropics, dumps a 50-pound sack of powdered milk into the hopper. This powder has traveled from a dairy farm in Wisconsin, via rail to San Francisco, via Victory ship to Ulithi, and finally to this floating factory. The scale of the operation is dizzying. The Quartz isn't just making treats, it is running a production line that rivals Detroit. Smitty watches the conveyor belt. The semi-frozen slurry is extruded into 5-gallon waxed cartons, sealed and shoved into the deep freeze. They are preparing for Operation Iceberg, the invasion of Okinawa. The brass knows what is coming. They know the Japanese are digging in. They know the kamikazes are waiting. The fleet is about to sail into a storm of steel and suicide attacks. The Navy's solution to the impending psychological trauma is ice cream, and lots of it. Smitty checks the tally board. They have produced 1,800 gallons in the last 24 hours. It is a staggering amount of sugar and fat. In the U.S. Navy, this is classified as Category A morale boosting. It is considered as essential as plasma. March 26, 1945. The deck of the USS Bunker Hill. High above the water, on the flight deck of the massive Essex-class carrier, the result of Smitty's labor is being consumed. Ensign Jack Miller sits on the wing of his F-4U Corsair. The plane is fully fueled, armed with rockets and .5 caliber belts. In an hour, he will launch for a combat air patrol over the fleet, but right now he is holding a paper cup. The ice cream is melting slightly in the heat, running over his fingers. He licks it off. It's sweet, creamy, and impossibly cold. "Hard to believe," his wingman, Lieutenant Commander Harris, says, leaning against the fuselage. "My old man fought in the Argonne in the First War, said they ate rat stew and hardtack. We're eating sundaes before we go kill people." Miller looks out at the horizon. The ocean is filled with ships, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, stretching as far as the eye can see. And in the center of the logistics train, protected by the most powerful navy in the history, is the ice cream barge. "It makes you wonder," Miller says quietly, "if we can do this, what chance do they have?" It is a thought that permeates the fleet. The ice cream is a symbol. It says that America has mastered the world so thoroughly that it can replicate the comforts of a Sunday afternoon drive-in movie theater in the middle of a war zone. It breeds a specific kind of confidence, not just that they will win, but that they are part of an unstoppable machine. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa, the Shuri Line. The reality on the other side of the line is a mirror image of despair. Colonel Hiromichi Yahara, the senior operations officer of the 32nd Japanese Army, sits in a limestone cave deep beneath Shuri Castle. The air is stagnant, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and limestone dust. The walls of the cave sweat moisture. Yahara reads the supply reports by the light of a flickering oil lamp. They are grim. The garrison is running low on medical supplies. Anesthesia is gone. Bandages are being reused. Food stocks are dwindling to rice and miso paste. A runner stumbles into the cave, bowing low. He carries a captured American ration pack taken from a dead Marine during a skirmish on the landing beaches. He places it on the table. He opens it. It contains cigarettes, chewing gum, canned meat, toilet paper, and a packet of powdered lemonade. He stares at the lemonade powder. He thinks of the reports from the coast watchers, reports of American ships glowing with lights at night, reports of barges that hum with generators, reports of enemy soldiers discarding half-eaten food. The disparity is no longer just logistical, it is existential. Yahara realizes that his strategy of bleeding the Americans white is flawed. You cannot bleed a beast that grows stronger with every battle. You cannot break the morale of an enemy that brings their own climate control and confectionery to the battlefield. He looks at the map of Okinawa. He knows he can make them pay for every yard of ground. He knows he can kill thousands of them. But looking at the lemonade powder, he realizes with a cold, sinking certainty, he cannot stop them.
September 2, 1945. A prisoner of war holding area, Okinawa. The guns have finally fallen silent. The Emperor's voice, broadcasting over the radio in a high, wavering tone that few could understand, has declared the unthinkable. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. Private Kenji Ito is still alive. He doesn't know how. He is one of the few from his company to walk out of the jungle rather than die by grenade or starvation. He stands in a barbed wire enclosure, surrounded by hundreds of other hollow-eyed survivors. They are filthy, covered in tropical ulcers, their ribs pressing against their skin like the rungs of a ladder. They wait for the Americans to execute them. They have been told for years that capture means torture, that the Western devils will show no mercy. Kenji watches the guards patrolling the perimeter. They look like giants, well-fed, uniformed in clean cotton, smoking cigarettes that smell of sweet tobacco. A truck rumbles up to the gate. It isn't a firing squad, it's a chow line. The Americans start unloading metal canisters. They are shouting, not in anger, but in a casual workaday rhythm. "Line up, let's go, let's go." A Nisei translator repeats the instructions in Japanese. Kenji shuffles forward, clutching a tin bowl he scavenged from a dead comrade. He expects rice, maybe a scoop of gruel. The ladle dips into the canister. It comes up with something white, thick, and semi-solid. It plops into his bowl with a soft, wet sound. Kenji stares at it. It is melting around the edges in the humidity. He touches it with a shaking finger. It burns him with its coldness. "Eat," the translator says, looking at him with a mix of pity and exhaustion. It's ice cream. Kenji lifts the bowl to his cracked lips. The smell hits him first. Vanilla, milk, sugar. It is a scent from another life, a scent that belongs to childhood, to festivals, to a world before the jungle consumed him. He takes a bite. The shock is immediate. The cold floods his mouth, numbing his teeth, followed instantly by a rush of sweetness so intense it makes his jaw ache. It is rich. It is creamy. It is perfect. Tears spill from Kenji's eyes. He doesn't sob. The tears just fall, carving clean tracks through the dirt on his face. He isn't crying because he is happy. He is crying because of what the ice cream means. He realizes now with total clarity that the war was never a contest. While he was eating lizards and boiling grass, the Americans had a machine that could freeze milk in the tropics. They had ships dedicated to joy. They had conquered the ocean, the air, and even the temperature. He looks around. Other prisoners are weeping too, huddled over their bowls, defeated not by a bomb, but by a scoop of vanilla. October 1945, the lagoon at Ulithi. The fleet is dispersing. The great armada that crushed the Imperial Navy is breaking up, heading home to San Diego, Pearl Harbor, and Norfolk. Captain Perkins stands on the deck of the tender, watching the USS Quartz. The concrete barge sits lower in the water now, its mission complete. The generators are winding down. The frantic production schedule of 500 gallons a shift is over. The ship is ugly. It will not be preserved in a museum. There will be no parades for the concrete bathtub. It will likely be sold for scrap or sunk as a breakwater. But Perkins knows the truth. He watched the destroyers come alongside this barge before the battles. He saw the faces of the kids who manned the anti-aircraft guns. He saw how a simple paper cup of something cold and sweet could reset a man's mind, pulling him back from the brink of insanity after days of kamikaze attacks. The Quartz was the ultimate flex of American industrial power. It was the logistics of excess. It told the sailors, "We have so much, we can give you this." It told the enemy, "We have so much, you cannot possibly win." Perkins lights a cigarette and flicks the match into the lagoon. The sun is setting on the Pacific, turning the water into a sheet of gold. The war is over. The guns are cold, and the ice cream has melted.